So I was thinking, right? It seems like the Jarvis Landry thing is coming down to between the Cleveland Browns and the New Orleans Saints, with the Saints, according I think it was like Ian Rappaport, not really being that serious of a of a potential suitor. So it seems like Jarvis could come back. And the thought entered my head. Well, if you trade for Amari Cooper, you bring back Jarvis Landry, and you brought back David Njoku effectively, right? Because you gave him the franchise tag. Is the pass catcher crisis that I talked about at the beginning of this offseason solved without the Browns ever spending a draft pick on a wide receiver? And is it possible that the Browns might not spend a first? I mean, they're clearly not going to spend a second round or a third round pick on a wide receiver. I think it's more possible than some people give it credit for. And why is it that I think that? Well, there are two things. One, if you have Jarvis Landry, who you obviously believe in because you brought back, and Amari Cooper, those are going to be your two primary options. Win now team, those veterans, they're going to be your two primary options. Then you're going to work in Donovan Peoples-Jones. Then you're going to work in Anthony Schwartz, a little bit of Jakeem Grant. And where is there room for a rookie? I'm sure there could be room for a rookie, but there's no room for a rookie to make a big impact in year one. Because those spots are taken up by players that they already have stuff invested in. So unless you love a wide receiver at 44 or 78 or 99, does it really make sense to take that wide receiver? Right? Like, I don't think they would take a wide receiver for wide receiver's sake. I think they think they're in a pretty good position, right? They have Harrison Bryant, a young player they believe in at tight end. They have David Njoku, a young player they believe in at tight end. They can get a third tight end off the street whenever they want, or they can get in the draft. Or maybe they don't want to have three tight ends this year because they're not going to be in as much heavy personnel. And then you can look at the wide receiving room. And again, as I mentioned, Amari Cooper and Jarvis Landry would be your 1 and 2. And then you would work in Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz alongside that. And maybe you sprinkle in some Jakeem Grant for some trick plays. That's 5 spots. There's usually only 6 spots for a wide receiver. Maybe that's a 5th round pick, right? So maybe that's where the Browns get a wide receiver and surprise everybody. Now, if they're not going to get a wide receiver, what would the Browns do at 44, 78, and 99? Well, let me propose this to you. What if the Browns went best defensive lineman available at 44? It could be Perion Winfrey. It could be Logan Hall. It could be Travis Jones. Whoever it is that you think is the best defensive interior player or defensive edge player available at 44, you grab. Then you package 99 and 78 to move up and grab another high-level interior defensive lineman. That's what I would propose that the Browns could do. Because what's more important for this team? Getting a 5th wide receiver who's not really going to contribute that much on offense in year one, whose upside may or may not be more than a Donovan Peoples-Jones, who you already have on a roster, or you draft players at the defensive line where you know you're going to need to use them. It's decent food for thought. Now, I've been on the train of ignoring wide receiver a little bit, especially since they upgraded the quarterback position, and just going all in on making sure that this defense has no holes. The reason I want to do that is because I still think, even though Deshaun Watson's going to be great, or Deshaun Watson projects to be great for the Cleveland Browns, the defense is going to be the number one reason why, if this Browns team does, have Super Bowl aspirations, they can reach them is because this defense is so insanely good. I know defense is underrated in today's game. I know not a lot of people talk about the most dominant defense. I know some people don't even believe the defense matters, but defense does matter. It's just that you need an offense that can hold its own weight. What we are confident in and what we hope to happen with this offense is that they are competent enough this year to be able to hold their own weight with a top 10 quarterback and a great backfield and great offensive line. If that's going to be the case and this defense is going to be as strong as it's ever been, really, with Miles and everybody else, maybe you could bring back Jadeveon as well, then all of a sudden you have a defensive unit that even the few times your offense does make a mistake, right? Maybe your offense turns the ball over once in a while. Maybe your offense, goes 3 and out and gets cold for a little bit. It's all good because of the defense. And I know there has been people who just for whatever reason, they never liked Joe Woods. They never will like Joe Woods. And they got all kind of issues with Joe Woods. And I'm just here to say that this defense last year was one of the best defenses in the NFL. Especially if you consider the amount of pressure, weight, and burden that the offense was last year. Because let's not forget, the Cleveland Browns offense last year was not just inefficient. It was not just poorly quarterbacked. It was not just stagnant and didn't produce points. They turned the ball over a ton, right? And the defense, time after time after time after time after time after time, answered the call, forced teams to a field goal when the Browns turned the ball over in the red zone, forced teams into 3 and outs when the Browns turned the ball. You want to know why that Green Bay Packer game was so close? It's because the Browns defense withstood 4 turnovers to keep that game close. You know what I mean? So many of these games that happened this year, and so much of the reason why the Browns were this close to making the playoffs still was because of the dominance of this defense. It was unfortunate we couldn't appreciate it properly because the weight of the offense was burdening the defense down to a point to where you really didn't recognize it, but it was definitely there. So the strength of this team is still going to be the defense. And if that's going to be the case, I would like to spend as many assets as possible on the defense and on the defensive line to get as strong as a defensive line. So I ask you, what would you rather have? George Pickens and a 4th round or 5th round defensive lineman? Or maybe you get Perion Winfrey and Alec Pierce, who might or might not contribute in year 1? Or, and I know this sounds wild, you get Perion Winfrey and you trade back in, you get Travis Jones, and then you wait to the 5th round, and then you snag what's the guy from Clemson's name? You snag a guy like that, right? That'll be available in that back end portion. Maybe that's the way to go with this, right? Get a guy at wide receiver who can make the team, obviously, but is not going to require playing time in year 1, so you could develop him. That's what that position is now, right? The wide receiver position, which came into this offseason as maybe the Browns' biggest need, has been addressed in multiple different ways. 1, you upgraded the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson is going to make your wide receivers better because he's able to be accurate and on time much more than the last quarterback here, right? So that's an upgrade to the wide receiver room. Then you traded for Amari Cooper before you even got Deshaun Watson, but then you get Amari Cooper, right? Upgrade to the room. Okay, what if you're able to bring back Jarvis on a low level deal? And then we already talked about the wide receivers are going to be better, so you can expect an improvement from Donovan Peoples-Jones. You can expect an improvement from Anthony Schwartz, maybe even some Jakeem Grant sprinkled in there. And I ask you, do you really think the Browns need to draft another wide receiver with the premium pick this year? Or would that pick be better served on the defensive line? I think that pick would be better served on the defensive line. I think the Browns should go all in on defensive line. Now, granted, look, I'm biased. You guys know, if you've watched me for a while, I would draft all defensive linemen if you gave me the opportunity to, right? I would have a whole draft. If there was a defensive lineman in every round that I like, I would draft a defensive lineman in every round because I think that they are such good, versatile players that impact the game on a level that most people don't appreciate, that you always need to have a stacked room of defensive tackles and defensive edges, especially in a 4-3. But that's just my philosophy, right? Maybe you don't jive with that. So let me know in the comment section down below. What path do you want the Browns to take? Are you for the double defensive tackle and maybe get a wide receiver in the 5th plan like I am? Or are you on the regular wide receiver, figure it out with the rest plan like everybody else has been on? Or are you on the defensive tackle and keep your 3rd round picks and not try to fill your draft with defensive tackles? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. You guys have a great day. Have a good night.